Hi there, Jason. Good to talk to you.
You too. How's it going?
You know, I'll just dive right in. I have added hexagrams to my daily ritual. I was just doing the LBRP, invoking and banishing. I added hexagrams. I started doing exactly the way you taught them in your banishing course, and then, of course, I made the mistake of looking around at other versions and looking at what other people were doing,
Okay.
and totally confused myself. But
Sorry, I'm not being rude. I'm emailing people that office hours are starting but I'm listening very
Oh,
attentively.
no. That's totally fine. No problem. We're all multitasking here. I noticed that some versions that I found, different sources, I could not find originals. I really tried to research this, but I couldn't quite locate the original. Some versions include the line in the hexagram ritual, "Let the divine light descend." And
Okay.
I really liked that. And I started to try to add it in, but then I was like, maybe I should ask first about why would a person include that or not include that? What is the origin of that phrase? I feel very attracted to it, but I don't know. I would love to hear why you chose not to include it in the course, and if it's, I don't know, like what, I think you get what I'm asking.
Yeah. What sources did you see that in? Just out of curiosity.
You know, I don't even remember at this point. I'm embarrassed to say it might have been Modern Magic by Donald Michael Craig, perhaps, but also other, like I probably saw it somewhere on the web, and then I looked and there were like other places on the web. I'm sorry, I can't totally remember where I saw it, but I didn't know if that was like a Golden Dawn thing, or it's definitely not a Crowley thing, I don't think. I don't know. I wanted to add it, but I wasn't sure if that was like some kind of big faux pas to add it where it shouldn't be.
No, it's great. If you like it, if it feels good, then use it. I think, if I remember correctly, I think that might have come from, what are their names? I always think of Denning and Phillips, but those are Dungeons and Dragons authors. But I think maybe there were these two great writers about magic in the Golden Dawn tradition. Let's see. Oh yeah, Melita Denning and Osborne Phillips.
Denning and Phillips, cool. I'll look them up.
Denning and yeah, they're great. They're very unknown, but very excellent first-class writers on magic. They were writing back in the 70s, I think. Wrote a lot of great books on magic. In the Golden Dawn and the Ogdoad tradition, which is now somewhat forgotten, is a Greek variant of the Golden Dawn, working around the number 8, which is very interesting. Nothing wrong with it. If you dig it, then use it. The only thing is it's not in the original version. Did you see the blog post that I sent out about the LBR?
Yes.
Okay. I need to do the second one. I hope that is helpful. I read it again after I wrote it, and it just sounded a little ranty, but hopefully it is helpful.
No, that was, I actually really appreciated that blog post, and I was really looking forward to hearing about hexagrams in the next blog post. Also, this is, I guess, a related question. I started to do hexagram rituals.
Wait, let me wrap this one out before you go to the next one. But okay, so but yeah, it looks like there's not many people with hands up, so I'll take the second question. So definitely raise your hand if you have a question, so we make sure we get you in. So there's only one thing that I would call your attention to in that phrasing, which is it says, "Let the divine light descend," which includes a certain presupposition. It's always, as I like to point out a lot, it's not about what's written there, it's about what's not written. So it includes the presupposition, or what is implied rather. It includes the presupposition that light is descending from above. So from that, we can extrapolate an entire worldview. And I think I pointed this out in office hours before. It's essentially what's happening there is, there is a presumption there that light is coming from above. So where do you think this cultural assumption would have come from?
Sounds pretty Judeo-Christian to me.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So how do you feel about that? Not Judeo-Christian per se, but the idea that, you know, you know what I'm getting at, I think.
Ironically enough, probably different than some people here, not everybody, but I am actually from a Jewish background, and I have it in my subconscious that practicing magic is a big no-no. So when I see those Judeo-Christian things, I'm like, oh, okay, this is fine. It's safe. It's good.
It's a big no-no unless you're male over 40 and right. So within certain rules, but yeah. So actually, I'm curious about this. I don't actually know the answer. So God being up high, like in heaven, is an extremely Christian idea. It's a medieval Christian conception of the world.
Totally.
And it's a and more deeply, it's a heliocentric assumption about the world. Mm-hmm. Right. So the idea that it's not even necessarily just Christian, it's heliocentric. And this turn. And this, I think some people have their mics down. Let me mute some people. Okay. So this turns out to be actually critical because it's critical to the entire thelemic revolution in a sense of restructuring a conception of the universe that is no longer heliocentric. But that's a side point. My question is that actually in Judaism at all? Like the idea that God is in heaven above you, or that this kind of heliocentric thing, or the idea that grace is descending from above?
Jews are pretty firm in the idea that anything we ascribe to God, like position or gender or anything, it's God is Ein Sof. God is completely and totally beyond all human conception, and it's all just metaphors for our benefit, and we can't even begin to conceive of the light of God, and even light is a metaphor. And I think they're pretty firm on that all of it is nonsense.
Which is beautiful, right? It's like that's so amazing. I would say so on point, but actually the opposite of on point, huh? To speak Kabbalistically. So it's a Christian thing then.
Yeah, which I dig. I'm down with Jesus.
Okay. So I simply call your attention to that in the sense that I think that perhaps a more, I don't know what to call it, a more savvy way of looking at it, if you want to think about it that way, would be, let's just ask this question, right? Like, why should I even put guiding language on this? Let me just ask this question. It's like, from where does divinity arise? From what direction does divinity arise?
From all directions at once.
Okay.
Or no directions ever, or all of the above. I guess you could rephrase it. I guess you could say, let divine light shine. Like, it doesn't have to come from a direction, I suppose. Let divine light be revealed. Or, I guess you could change language to make it with a different orientation. Absolutely, right? Although then we would have to ask more questions. For instance, if light is shining, it is emanating from one point outward. It's emanating from a source, right? And then if the second one was let divine light be revealed, right? Well, this assumes it wasn't already revealed. That's a very good. So do you want to rephrase it again? I don't know. I'm just asking. I mean, this is for everyone to decide on their own, but I can't help but ask. I think let the divine light descend. I think it appeals to me because it's so ridiculously cartoonishly dramatic. Like I don't know. It's very dramatic. I enjoy it, even if I wouldn't necessarily completely endorse the philosophy behind it, I suppose. Well, that's great then, right? This is an extremely mature way of looking at it, in a sense. It's like to take the most absurd possible language is actually, I think you could argue, I think as you're arguing, right? It's like actually the most mature way to approach it, because then it's obviously non-literal. Yeah, totally. Right. So that's perfect. And then this is actually the exact reason why Crowley used the phrase holy guardian angel. Right? Because it would have been, and he says this in print, it's like, it would have been so easy. It's like, why would you say holy guardian angel? It's like, well, it would have been so easy to say, oh, higher self, or, deeper individuation, or, even genius, or Atman, or some other thing. But it's like, at the end of the day, like, no, because as we know very well, first of all, if you use psychological language, then it gets psychologized away. Yep.
It's an excellent way to banish anything, by the way. Just start speaking psychological terms, and then people are like, oh, well, then it's, it just suddenly makes it not real. And right? It's like when people try to do this with other people too. It's like, oh, Brad's such a sociopath, right? You just have to say the word, and now Brad is non-entity, right? It's amazing. It's a magical use of language. So to take a deliberately absurd conception of things is actually very psychologically wise. And I think that, for instance, that is the exact reason why, in the 2000s, when I was learning magic, and I made it very clear to everyone that I learned from the get-go, starting in 2002 or 2003, it's like, I want to find a way to bring this to more people. I want to find a way to make this big, right? And I was very explicit with that, and in order to help people. And Jen actually grilled me on that point on the Lower East Side. Shortly, Jen actually said to me, it's like, why do you want to be this person? Why do you want to do this? And I said, to help people, and I meant it. And then Jen said, well, then you'll be successful. And then 2 seconds later, the Olsen twins walked by. True story. True story, Lower East Side. But Jen said to me, and a lot of people said to me, Grant Morrison said to me, actually, no, Grant, I don't think Grant did say that to me. A lot of people said to me, and then also like normies who were looking at what I was doing, like looked at it and they said, you just need to find a different word that's not magic, that doesn't have these connotations. Just find a different word for it. And I tried really, really hard, and I couldn't come up with anything good. I mean, you can say the closest, the best anyone's ever done is like neurolinguistic programming, right? What that, which automatically opens it to accusations of pseudoscience and things like that. I finally decided at the end of it, it's like, no, you know what? I like that it's called magic, because to call it anything else would diminish it into something else. Now it's something that can be packaged and sold, and it's a psychological thing, and it's not the wondrous. It's not infinite. It's no longer infinite. It's something else. And also, it's kind of like, well, you know what? Like, is magic silly? Like, yes. Right. And I've worn that albatross on my neck my whole life. So I'm used to it now, but it's like, is it silly? Yes. Does it cause people's eyes to roll? Yes. But the conclusion that I came to was like, well, you know what? Or is it scary? Like, yeah, it certainly can be for some people. Like, even you were mentioning things like this. And I came to the conclusion that, it's perhaps a bit harsh, but I don't think it is. It's just like, well, you know what? If people aren't daring enough to take that step, if people aren't willing to be made a fool of in pursuit of truth, right? If people are not willing to be made a fool of in pursuit of truth, for all the Kabbalists listening, then they've failed the first test.
Yes.
That's on them. It is, and you have to be afraid, not afraid. You have to be willing to sacrifice. You have to be willing to give something up. And it's the same in the East, where they make it renunciation and becoming a monk and things like that. But I don't like that either, because it just creates weird religious hierarchies. But you have to, it's like, you have to be willing to give something up, or simply, it's not giving something up, because whatever is ventured is gained infinite fold. It's not a transaction. There's nothing transactional about magic. And forms of magic that are transactional are false, right? In the sense of, oh, I do a sacrifice to get something, or like I do something to get something. It's totally false perception of reality, and leads to rough lives. But you have to be willing. Is nothing ventured, nothing gained. You have to be willing to take the adventure. And in our culture, there's not a whole lot that people hold sacred. It's like, I could make this $50,000, right? Maybe I should, I don't know. I can make it $50,000 and everyone would be like, oh my God. But like, some people would be like, wow, like that's gotta be like, and I'd be teaching, fucking Amazon VPs and things like that, and not contributing to the world. It's not what I want to do. Or not only, sure, I'll happily teach them, but just as long as I teach everyone, right? And that's part of the deal. It's like, it's got to be available to everyone without discrimination. So you can make it cost but that's not really a sacrifice, not in the West. Money is whatever. People, it means nothing to people. If you don't have any, it means a lot, but it's not sacred, right? And what else? I mean, it's like you can demand some type of ritual, austerities or something, but that's very temporary and fleeting. But the one thing that really does mean something to people, the one thing that cuts very deeply, it's like we can really ask, it's like, what do people hold sacred anymore? They don't hold religion sacred. They don't hold the family sacred. Very little is sacred for people. They're fundamentally nihilistic, but there's one thing that cuts to the bone that people are very, very hesitant to do, and that's be made a fool of. It's to be embarrassed in public.
Totally. 100%.
Right? So what do you think the first request is going to be? Because I'll just say this, practically, it's not arbitrary either. It's like the book, the law says, you must teach, but you can make the ordeals severe. But let me be clear, and the ordeals are severe. But let me be clear about this. The ordeals are not imposed by me or any other teacher. So if you ever go to a teacher who demands crazy things from you, you have to give me this much money, demands sexual favors, demands this, that, or the other, it's totally abusive, right? And you should stay away from that person. It's not the same as charging, right, for a service. That's different. That's just the way of the world, right? But and one of the reasons why I do charge is because all the people that supposedly teach for free, they're not teaching for free. Believe me, they're teaching for deep personal obligations, and that is not the way that I roll, or I think anyone should. But so there are severe ordeals in magic, but the ordeals are not imposed by a teacher, right? There will be ordeals. There will be tremendous ordeal if you persevere in the path. And everyone on this call, if you persevere in the path in a serious, real way, there will be tremendous ordeals. Ordeals that you feel will break you, but that you will triumph over if you persist. Ordeals that you thought perhaps not possible for a human being to endure. This is the way of things, right? But it's the Arthurian quest, the quest through Chapel Perilous, or simply the history of the world, right? But those ordeals are imposed by your life in reality. They are never imposed by a teacher. So I should be very clear about that point. It's an extremely ethical point about, it's very important to make that point clear for students. And also just because I know, I'm not under any illusions that people who take my classes are only taking my classes. I'm sure people are learning from all different types of things. So I simply say that as a public service announcement for all people on the spiritual path. It's something to be very clearly aware of. Anyways, but that's certainly how I constructed mine. Where it's like, if I'll just say this, if you're not willing to be embarrassed in public, you're in the wrong pursuit here. Because like literally, I mean, I'll say this, okay? In my perspective, the path of magic is the most profound thing on the planet. It is at least the most profound thing that is open to me as a white Westerner, right? If I lived in a different culture, it would probably be something else, right? I'm not Jewish, right? I don't come from the closest you could say in terms of my esoteric lineage would be Masonry or Nordic paganism, right? But not in my, not like I'm in a family of Northern pagans. I mean, like literally like 1,000 years ago, right? So, or more. So that's a long time ago. But yet I pursued this with my life. And I think that I can think of nothing more profound, transcendent, and something in life that truly does make good on all of its promises and more if you persist. If you persist in good faith, if you persist in a real way, it's not bullshit, right? But at the same time, it's like, the attitude, you can be experiencing divine, I'm sure people have had this experience, like you can be experiencing transcendent divine revelations, and the attitude of people around you would be literally like you're, like a Wiccan at Cinnabon at the food court in the mall, you know what I mean? It's like, but that's how it is. That's how it goes. It's like, that's a lot of cultures have that, it's like, that's what Yoda is supposed to be about. Right. But also even like Russian Orthodox Church, they have the crazy wisdom tradition. It's like, it's always the people who seem the craziest that are the most in touch. Right. So, and I'm just crazy enough I'm just or I'm so crazy that I appear totally lucid and rational, because I'm very good at this. I'm very good at insanity. So anyways, so yeah, so all of which is another circuitous way of saying that I think I very much like your approach to that. And if it feels good, then great.
Thank you very much for that answer. And also thank you for putting together these materials, because there's no way I would have learned this without, someone that I trusted to teach me. And,
Thank you.
It looks like there's more hands raised. If you don't want to answer my second question, which is pretty quick, then you don't.
I'll answer it because I said I would.
Okay.
But I appreciate it. Thank you. There's lots more coming too. There'll be a lot more.
So very quickly and related to this, I started doing hexagram rituals. I would do banishing pentagram, banishing hexagram, invoking pentagram, invoking hexagram. I felt once I started adding invoking hexagrams for like at least 4 days solid, and I didn't totally connect it at first, I felt so much energy in my body. I could hardly eat. It just felt like I had gone to the old country buffet in the astral plane and had gorged myself with energy. And it was so intense. I actually had to kind of step it back, and that was a few days ago. I haven't done it in a few days. And I wanted to know, invoking hexagrams, is that supposed to be is that recommended as a definite daily ritual? Was I overdoing it? Should it not be invoking every day? I don't know. It was so intense when I started to add it. It just felt like I was gorged on energy.
Yes. So it worked, right? So yeah, so great question. The more you do it, the more energetic yield is going to come through. Yeah, absolutely, right? And you have to learn how to capacitate it. You need to learn how to build a tolerance. Right. So, for instance, neither I nor anyone on this call, I am sure, has ever done anything like partaking in cannabis. This is a very clean-cut young Republican audience. Everyone is like young police cadets. And so I'm sure that nobody has ever done something like that. But from what I've heard from my contacts on the mean streets, people, you have to build a tolerance, right? And so, like some of these young long-haired communists will smoke a lot all at once, right up front, and then they'll be like, "Whoa, man!" And then the next thing you know, they'll be in an ISIS recruitment camp. So they've had too much, and so then they learn, hopefully, as they proceed along the path of communist darkness, to do a little bit at a time and find their comfort point. And they find that grows over time, but only as they get used to it. That is the same with magic, right? And so a lot of people will say things like, oh, well, you can do an invoking in the morning and a banishing at night. Obviously, this is why there are invoking and banishing forms, so you can turn it on and turn it off. But I don't tell people like something mechanical and rote, like, invoke in the morning, banish at night, because that's just a one size fits all. That's not the issue. The issue is that people need to experience what it actually feels like, which you've done, so well done, and then get used to it, tolerate it, and capacitate it. That's what working with energy means, right? So there's your answer. Turn it on. Don't overdo it. Don't do 4 in a row. Turn it on, get used to it, understand it, capacitate it, figure out what you can and cannot do, and how you think and don't think while you're in that space, and then turn it off. And in general, it's a good idea to only, particularly at the beginning, or really at all points, it's a pretty good idea to keep that constrained to the ritual space, rather than just turning it on and walking around in public. Because, for instance, if you experience things like the following, feeling blown out, feeling like you're merging with the landscape, feeling really airy and spaced out, feeling, also the other one is having really weird encounters with people, like just random ass people will come up to you on the street and say bizarre shit to you. That seems to happen a lot for some reason. These are symptoms of energetic bleed and boundary issues. So the general prescription is take a hit, see how you feel, let it wear off, and then banish. Write down what you've learned. And if you want to take 2 hits next time, then go ahead, but pace yourself, right? And the idea is you need to learn how to capacitate and work with the energy. And you need to understand what it actually is, because all of these are, we're talking about, when you go through the pentagram and hexagram rituals, you're talking about a Swiss Army knife of, potentially something like 64 different energies. And so the point is not to like use it like a Monster Energy drink. The point is to, right?
Guilty as charged.
Sure. I mean, but as are we all. But the point is to understand, to work with it in like a scientist, like in lab conditions. It's like, oh, what is that? And then ultimately the goal is to understand how it interacts with your causal and astral and etheric, quote unquote, bodies. Translation, the point is to understand what are the places within you already that are imbalanced or lacking and can be not overloaded, but balanced. The whole watchword with all of this is not, how can I vibe myself up to be as awesome as possible? The whole watchword of this is balance. Because remember, with the 4, just if you take the 4 elements, you need to have them all working in perfect tandem to get a working wheel, right? And the wheel is your life. So, I cover this all in great, great detail in Adept Initiative, and there's a ton of exercises in there for tremendously good exercises for balancing all of that and fine-tuning it. It is only for the elements. Alchemy of Chaos covers the planetary energies, but does not use the hexagram framework. We will be talking a bit more about that in the next course to come, but I don't have an ETA on that, but it is coming. So there's a lot of really good information in both of those courses.
Thank you. That was a great answer, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your material a lot.
Thank you. You're welcome. All right. Thank you for calling in, and I really appreciate all the compliments. Okay,